Well, permit me to welcome all of us to the 8th seminar series of the Department of Architecture, which is mostly for postgraduate students in architecture and, of course, in environmental sciences. Before I invite the HOD for the welcome address and before he establishes the protocol for today's event, I want to remind us that the seminar series has actually been the avenue where we come together and learn in the area of research. And you agree with me that for some of us who have been part of it from day one up to now, you agree with me that it has been a blessing. That is what it has been to me. Anyways, I've learned a lot from how to research, how to carry out literature review, how to do a proper referencing, and we have been going through a lot of it from time to time. And I want to assure you today that it's going to be another blessing and lesson for all of us. I want us to be attentive. Let us be attentive. Let us note down as the guest speaker will be sharing from our wealth of experience with us today. Let us also, when we get to the aspect where we'll be allowed to ask questions, let us also put forward our questions so that all of us at the end of the day will learn and be better in the area of research. Let us put our hands together as I invite HOD Architecture to give us an opening address.
Thank you very much, moderator. Good morning, everyone. You're welcome to the 8th Architectural Postgraduate Seminar Series today, 31st May 2023. And I would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed attendees and our special guest, Professor Oluwatayo, Adedapo. She's an erudite scholar, and I respect her a lot. And there are two people that I respect a lot in Covenant. She and Professor Iben. They are my mentor. The topic of our seminar series today is research design. If you bear in mind, this is the 8th seminar series. We've had previous ones. We've had series 1, series 2, series 3. So let me just recap some of them. The first was the art and profiting of productive supervision by Professor Fayomi from Engineering Department. And the second was motivating students for academic excellence. That's Professor Poko. And the third was case study by Dr. Anifo Oshie in the department. And the fourth was writing background of study and problem statements by Dr. Alade Moses. And the fifth was motivation for research by Dr. Dewolu. And the sixth was delivered by my humble self, writing the introduction chapter. And the seventh, once again, was delivered by the Dean of the College, Professor Poko, carrying out literature review. And the eighth now will be delivered by Professor Oluwatayo, which is research design. And I know when you hear research and design, as architects, sometimes we begin to wonder, research on its own is ambiguous, very big, very complex. Then design, how do we marry both together? Well, it's all about semantics. I know she will do justice to that. I would want you to please pay attention, be ready to get a lot, and also ask questions. Especially the MSc students. There are some things that might not be too clear, especially I was just discussing with Prof, the issue of case study, the merit, demerit, pro, con. It's deeper than that when it comes to research. And I know as I invite her, she would take us into a deeper understanding of research design, methodology, and all of that. Thank you very much. You're welcome.
A round of applause for HOD. Well, permit me to add one or two things as regarding who our guest speaker is today. When I started my PhD program, well, let me say when I started it again, there was one time I started it and I could not cope, the pressure and not knowing how to go about it, so I gave up. Okay, so the subsequent time, which is now when I started again, I was looking for the area that interests me, and I kept on digging, searching, reading literature, and when I saw her work online, it caught my attention, not just because it has to do with architecture, because it summarized the idea of what I've been thinking in the area of the research I was about to do. And I digested it, I kept on reading it, and it opened me up to, it gave me the proper understanding on how to go about my research work. And believe you me, the more I read, the more I listen to researchers, the more I attend the series, I begin to develop confidence in myself. And when I talk about my research, what I'm doing and all of that, you see it written all over anybody I'm speaking with that I have the knowledge of what I am doing. So the first time when we invited her to be our external examiner here, I was actually starstruck. I was like, okay, so this is the professor I've been reading her work. And I also had the privilege of meeting her personally again, and it was exciting. So I'm saying this so that I can encourage you guys to be open to knowledge, talk to her, ask questions when the privilege presents itself. She's a scholar par excellence, she's a mother figure, and she has been there. She understands you as a student of architecture, she understands the research, and she'll be willing to help. So we are privileged to be here and privileged to be here. Let me quickly, before we invite her, let me quickly invite Dr. Mrs. Alabi, who happens to be the chairman research committee. Can we put our hands together as we invite?
Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy that we've been able to have today's seminar, the 8th seminar. You're welcome, ma. So, the research committee has seen a gap, especially when it comes to research in architecture. You know, we architects, yes, we are leaders in the construction industry, but we now need to make ourselves known as leaders also in the research world. And that's one of the things that we've realized, that we need to actually educate ourselves on what research is all about. And that's why all the various aspects of research that we've been studying, you know, to help ourselves to grow and to grow exponentially in the field of research. At the same time, the research committee is also working towards publications at the end of the day, where we'll have our own journal of architecture and also be able to hold conferences through the department and the college at large. So I would like you to listen with open minds and be ready for questions, please. Because the more we ask questions, the more knowledge we will accumulate. And that is the idea, the brainchild behind these seminar series. So thank you once more for coming, and God bless you.
So a round of applause for Dr. Mrs. While she was discussing the essence of this series with us and what we have been doing as a research committee, our dean is also present here to grace the occasion. Remember, she has been there with us and for us all through the series. And for the first time in the College of Environmental Sciences, she was able to put together an international conference for all of us. We're part of it, and of course, everybody is proud of what actually happened in the course of the conference. It was an avenue for some of us, or most of us, if not all of us, to experience what an international conference is about. It was, of course, an avenue to see other researchers, academicians from other universities around us. And permit me to also take the advantage of being the moderator today to say that I'm actually proud of our master's student, postgraduate student, because they did excellently well in the course of our international conference. They were able to learn and to also prove that they have been learning in the course of the series. It's about time to explore, to learn, to appreciate research, to have another perspective of how interesting research could be. I have the singular honor to invite our guest speaker for today. She's the HOD, Architecture Department, Covenant University, here in Ota, our neighbor. Like HOD said, she's one of the researchers in the area of architecture that some of us respect a lot. When you go online, you want to read about architecture-related research, and you realize that, yes, she's excellent. Just like Professor Ibem too, I read a lot about his work. But there are few, and we hope that in the nearest future we'll see a lot of researchers in the area of architecture that will be competing with other people, even in sciences, just the way it is. So I have the singular honor to invite our guest speaker today, Professor Adedapo Oluwatayo. With a round of applause together as she comes.
Thank you very much. The Dean, the HOD, members of faculty and staff, all PhD students, welcome, and the MSc students. So you're all welcome. I count it a privilege to actually be here to present on research design. Research is what we do. And one of the things we all gain when we go to school is to learn how to research. I usually tell people that when somebody says research, it means research. Somebody has searched before and found something, right? But you want to go and research it. Something already exists. For you to want to do research, it means that thing already exists. Somebody has already discovered it. You're not the one discovering it. But it just means that there's something we don't know that we need to know. Same thing goes with MSc students. When you say you want to design something, somebody is always asking you what is new that you want to add. Do I have a witness? You can't be designing the same thing we already have. Somebody is going to ask you what exactly happened. Research design. Design research. Somebody has heard it before. Research design, many times we look at it in academia. It's just by way of introduction. I'll go to my outline. We look at it in the academia, and persons will look at it as the focus is research, but now I want to design it. But in practice, you are going to be doing design research. Your focus is design, but you have to research it. So whichever way you're doing a form of research. And for master's students, what you're actually doing is design research. For PhD students, what you're actually doing is research design. So now I will go into the outline. I'm just going to talk about introduction. We'll define what research is. Why do I need to design my research? Which factors determine the research design? How do I choose a research design? Then the research designs, we'll just have an overview, then we'll summarize. So what is working? What is research? Everybody knows what research is. I can't remember the author, but there was somebody that said research is poking with a purpose. Poking or prying with a purpose. It's more or less like you want to go and look at something, but you have something in mind. The essence of that is for you to even start a research, you have a question in your mind. And that's why I like this. I got this from the internet. You can just scan it and then check. You first identify a problem. It means there is something that is going on. And I'm sure we've done chapter 1, so everybody knows what a research problem is. And for us to do chapter 1, For us to do your statement of research problem, the first thing you want to find out is what have others said about this particular thing. Then what is it that we don't know yet? I thank God I have both audiences, and I happen to be coordinating master's thesis, so I can speak in both ways. At master's level, even when you want to design, there's something you're researching first. Do I get a witness? You're working on lighting, you're working on something else. There's something you're researching first. And for you to do that research, you must have identified a problem with that design type. Somebody will say if you want to design a teaching hospital, the major challenge would always be circulation. Who is designing a teaching hospital? If you are designing a classroom, the major challenge would always be lighting. So sometimes when you pick those things, you are actually picking them with a purpose, and that's why it's important you check. You actually try and find out what exactly is going on with my design, and why do I need to focus more on this area of design. There are many areas of design, circulation, functionality, and all the like, all those things they used to ask you during your jury. But once somebody knows this is your area, the person is also likely to focus on it. So you review your literature, you come up with questions. I'm going through this because we will need it later. Before you now choose a study design. If you haven't gone through all of that, you may not be able to easily choose a study design. So just in summary, every research would actually start with, sorry, let me just be using the one in front of me. Every research will actually start with a problem. But before you can collect data and analyze, you need to first design it. How do I want to go? So in every research, you have a design. So what is research design? It's actually the structure of the research. For everything I want to do, I want to structure it in such a way that I find out step by step. I'm sure you've been told that research is systematic. If something is systematic, it means it has steps, it has stages. I go from this stage to the other, then I go to the next stage, and I go to the next stage. So my research design is like, now that I know this is a problem I want to investigate, how do I want to structure it? In what ways do I want to look at it? In passing, I'm going to be mentioning a bit of philosophy. Have we all done philosophy? So that I know where I'm talking from. At least you did it at BSc. Even if you haven't done it yet, at least you did it at BSc level. Research philosophy, we basically have which types? Oh yeah, let's have an interactive one. We basically have which types? A lot of people have heard pragmatism before. Eh? Some people have heard positivism, interpretivism, and all the like. They all have particular ways of designing the research. And that's why your philosophy is the way you want to see it. Persons say your philosophy is your mindset. Two persons can carry out the same research, but from two different mindsets, and that's why the design matters. Somebody is looking at it and says, I want to look at it in depth, which a case study does. It means I want to look at it all round. So the person picks just one tiny part, then begins to tell you, this is the back of this elephant. It is this color. It has that. Meanwhile, somebody says, I want to look at the entire thing. Then I want to take a survey of everybody and find out what is even their perception about this elephant. You know, the two of us are doing the same. We are looking at it in two different ways. And we'll get two different results that would be valid in their own right. So what I'm saying in essence is there is no particular design that is superior to the other. You only need to justify the design you're using. So it provides the blueprints for your measurements, your data collection, your data analysis. And I like this. It said design is the method of putting form and content together. What is form? What is content in research? I have something that is the overall that I want to do, have it? But the contents are the things I put inside that now make up that thing. Architecture, you know, we are very wonderful people. Many people are into graphic design. What else do we do? In fact, a lot of people do modeling commercially. They are making a lot of money from it. Now, what I want to do is graphic design, but what are the things I want to put in? For those who know graphic designers, every graphic designer has something about him. Once you see this design, you know this thing is from this person. So when you are designing something, what are you doing? You are putting that form. You have the form already, but you are putting content in it, and that content is what defines you. There is no right or wrong design, as we will say. Why do I need to design my research? I want to provide a direction. Otherwise, I won't know the way to go. For those of us who are in PhD class, you know how difficult it is. You come today, you make one presentation, they tell you something, then you're asking yourself, am I wrong? No, you are not. What it simply means is you don't have enough information. Go get it. Some PhD students will present and will tell you this thing is too wide. What it simply means is given your 3 years, you will not finish. Because we know you have put in too many things. And the way research goes is either you have a wide scope and very few samples. Do we understand what I'm saying? Your subject area is wide, but your samples are not so many. Or you have a smaller scope, but your samples are going to be very large. That's the way research works. Both of them are correct. You want to ensure that the evidence that you are collecting would answer the questions that you have initially put up. You are trying to eliminate bias. I used to tell my students that sometimes mommy sends you to the market and says, go and find out the prices of blue materials. But because you don't like blue, you can actually go back to mommy and say there is no blue in the market. Do I have a witness? But if mommy has told you, gives you a sample and say, go to mama this person, tell them to write down the price of this thing. Do you have a choice? Because you know mommy will call mama this and mama that and say, did my daughter come to you? So it actually eliminates bias if you are able to write it down that this and these are the things that we are not able to get. And sometimes students get worried when some people don't respond. I usually tell them, don't bother. Just report that they did not respond. But you have made an attempt. Then you want to increase your efficiency, because the moment you are able to put down what and what you are doing, then somebody is able to say yes. To this extent you've been efficient. To this extent I can say the data you collected was reliable. So which factors am I going to look at when I want to determine my research design? I want to check out which problem am I actually investigating. We have a chart that will take us through it. Then what kind of questions have I raised? In what way am I looking at it? Some persons have heard objective and subjective before. Both of them are true. I can look at something objectively. I can look at something subjectively. It's what I saw. And both of them are always correct. For those in PhD class, even when you have objective measures of some things, they will say add a bit of subjective. Why do we need to add a bit of subjective? I came into this room and I can see a lot of blue. It's possible it is coincidental. It's possible some persons planned it. If I report it objectively, somebody will say, Bells, they like to wear blue. Just like they say Covenant, they like to wear black. But what if I go subjective and I go to a few persons wearing blue and I say, can you tell me why you are wearing blue? I get more light. So that's why your objective and your subjective are always right. Which research approach are we looking at? There are basically 3 research approaches. The third one is a combination of the first 2. This one is just a run through. I'm sure we've all done it. Quantitative and qualitative research approaches. I will explain that further before you now decide which research design. Because if you're going the qualitative way, there are some research designs that fit. If you're going the quantitative way, there are some research designs that fit. What we've done in Covenant is, thank God mommy is here. Every master student does a combination of the 2. You must do the quantitative and qualitative. You do the quantitative to find out about your subject area, not the building type. Then you do the qualitative as case study for your building type. So you must merge the two, which is always an interesting thing, because you would actually find out Akidata says windows should be this size. No, not Akidata. Okay. Akidata says spaces should be this size. You go and find out, is it efficient for the people that use it? You can now come back and rework it. I currently have students who are even going to end up doing simulations, because what they are doing is lighting. So their own is actually 3 stages. They've gone to the field, they've collected survey data, they've checked, they've done case study. Then when they finish designing, they will still do the simulation to find out whether their lighting is efficient or not. So we can go that way. So your research approach will determine your research design. So we can go on to how do I choose a research design. Then please help me go to the next one. I don't know if you can all see this. I was actually afraid we wouldn't see it. Can somebody see it? This is the way I look at research design. What problem am I actually trying to solve? You know, a research problem is what? Is a gap in literature. Every other thing has been done about this except this. Or this has been done by others in other areas. They've done it in hospitals. We currently have a student who is trying to work on flexibility. And what he has discovered is they've done a lot of research on flexibility in office buildings, but they've not done in residential buildings. Has anybody seen it? But what we're discovering is that quite a number of residential buildings are being turned into something else. Yes, we have a lot of change of use and all the like. So that's what he has discovered. But now he needs to find out by himself, what kind of question is he going to be raising? That's the question. What are the facts? If I want to find out what the facts are, isn't everybody that is interested in the facts? What are the facts? Can I predict the outcome? Some people will say something influences this. I currently have one MSc student who is trying to find out whether the adoption of biophilic design elements, who is doing biophilic, it looks like that is what is in trend. That's what is trending now, eh? In fact, this one is in biophilic, that one is in biophilic, and I'm asking myself, what's going on? So there's one that is trying to find out the influence of the adoption of biophilic design elements on the well-being of patients. It's funny, but specialist hospital, are you also doing specialist hospital? So they are different a little. So what's the person trying to do? The person is trying to predict the outcome. Is there any way that the adoption of these things actually influence something? And what is that going to help you do? I'm just diverting a little for the MSc students. By the time you finish, you are going to discover which ones should take priority in your design. Because it's the ones that that influence well-being that should actually take priority in your design. You would have reasons for not implementing some because they were not influential, and you are saying, since I'm focusing on well-being, I don't have to do this. So ask yourself a question. Are you going to be asking what are the facts? If I'm asking what are the facts, it means the theory I'm actually using is positivism. I'm not sure, do I need to go to the definition of positivism? So, and what it means is you're going strictly quantitative. Because qualitative will not give you facts. It will give you opinions, people's perceptions, but it won't give you the facts. So if what I want is what are the facts, do I want to find out whether one thing is causing the other? Do I want to predict the outcome? Then I'm going the way of positivism, then I'm doing a quantitative research. But if what I want to do is I want to understand people's behaviors, I want to try and find out what are your experiences. We actually do this a lot in architecture. For those who do environment behavior studies, some persons did it in a BSc level. In fact, your supervisors will make you combine the two. Because after going the way of positivism, they also want to find out from the people's experiences, can you document a few, even if it's to interview 8 persons? because it gives you richer data. So if you want to understand people's behavior, you know, I mentioned the issue of people wearing blue. If I come to you personally and I ask you, what am I trying to do? Understand your behavior. And the way you answer me depends on your mood that time. That's why usually they say this is objective, this is subjective. It also depends on the way I approach you. I come to you and I look at you in one way, you say, you can't even say good morning. Then I ask you something, I say, you know? So you have that qualitative approach. But what if I want to combine the two? I want to get both factual information, then I want to get an interpretation of those things that they gave me. Then I'm going the mixed method way. It means I'm combining the qualitative and the quantitative approaches. And two philosophies. Though I like to limit myself to realism and pragmatism. But post-positivism combines both. Realism, some persons will call it critical realism. It's just in the order in which they combine qualitative and quantitative. Pragmatism will combine both at the same time and say, I'm using both because my objective 1 requires objectivism, objective 2 requires subjectivism, so I'm using them concurrently. But critical realism will tell you, I will finish with one approach. Whatever results I get, I go back to the field and confirm it with the other approach. So that's just the major thing. So these are the designs that we can now talk about. I've tried to limit myself to those research designs that we use a lot in architecture. So if you are going the way of positivism, you are likely to be doing survey or experiments. Survey is what? We'll get into what it is. But if you are collecting factual information, you can standardize your questions, then you are going the way of survey. I will explain that one. There's another slide for that. But what if I want to do a bit of manipulation? For those of us in architecture, the kind of manipulation we do it on Revit. Or which other software do we do? They do simulations as well. I'm sure of Revit. Then the student that I said is working on lighting suddenly came up with another software again that analyzes lighting in a space. And this generation, we don't need to teach you anything that is computer. So I won't go into it. So experiments in architecture, many times, most of us do a bit of simulations. Then somebody had come at one time and said he wanted to measure lighting within a space. That's also an experiment. I can put off one light and find out how many lux. I put off another one, I find out how many lux. Then I put off everything, open the windows and find out how many. That's still an experiment. What am I doing? I'm carrying out a bit of manipulation to see whether lighting improved or whatever. So that is experimental research. But if I go the qualitative way, I could be doing historical research. Usually historical research is limited to BSc students, but I'm aware some of us will end up being lecturers, even if we are not lecturers yet. So historical research, some people want to find out how did the architecture of Benin evolve. I think that's the richest architecture we have in Nigeria. I'm not biased, I'm not from Benin. How did the architecture of Benin evolve? That's an historical research. So you may want to go into things like that. But I'm sure at MSc, okay, persons at PhD level can also do that. Yes, persons at PhD level can also do that. So if you want to find out things that have happened in the past, then you are going the historical way. Ethnography, if you want to study the culture, the behaviors of a place, especially from the point of view of an insider, whether you are doing direct or indirect observation, that is ethnography for you. Action research, most persons will do it to intervene in a situation, and usually you'll be told this occurs a lot in practice. So for persons who are in practice, you may actually be doing a lot of action research. Then case study is the last one. But for the mixed method, you can pick any of them. So the last part there just talks about what kind of instruments you are likely to be using. Questionnaire, documents, archives, relics, that's what goes for history. Of course, I will leave this here so we can look at it. So let's now go on to what questions do I need to ask. If you notice, when I was looking at the questions, I was saying something like, what do you want to do? Do you want to find out the facts or what? So what kind of study are you trying to carry out? Do you want to try to categorize? Now let's do a little exercise. You will tell me whether it's qualitative or quantitative. Categorize. Can it be quantitative? If you want to categorize, it can actually be both ways. Describe. Whether you like it or not, it is qualitative. So if you are doing case study, it is qualitative. Explain. You must go the way of interview because you don't know. Evaluate. Quantitative, strictly. Compare. It can actually be both ways. And that's actually the essence of case studies. You are comparing. That's the qualitative part. Correlate. Quantitative. You don't have a choice. Predict. Quantitative. Control. Quantitative. So that's the way it is. Once you are able to tell what kind of questions you want to ask, it's already pointing you towards something. Then, what's the nature of truth that you want to investigate? I decided to bring this in. You know, at first I talked about philosophy. But now you want to ask yourself, this particular thing you want to investigate, do you think there is a universal truth? Do you think there is only one truth that stands? Or do you think it depends? Yes. You know, if I want to find out about lighting inside this space now, there's only one truth. By the time I finish, what happens? I'm just going to get one truth. It won't depend on me. Because what am I doing? I'm not looking at perception. I brought in instruments. Instruments is not supposed to lie, Abby. So what is that one? There's only one truth. But what if I come into the room, then I ask the first person, how do you feel about the lighting inside this room? It's subjective. If you check my glasses, it's photochromic. If I'm inside light, it's bright. It's dark. Because I'm a little sensitive to light. If you enter my house, I don't put on all the lights. I'm sensitive to light. But some persons, if you don't put on 7 fluorescent, you haven't seen. So I'm just trying to look at it. But many times persons would also say questionnaire is quantitative, is objective. Why do you think there's a universal truth if you use questionnaire? Somebody says they are facts. Yes, whatever things you get from it, although some people will choose not to answer you. There's one question I know students never like to answer. What is your CGPA? You just see that they take the questionnaire and bring it back. There's no CGPA. It's very funny. But questionnaire many times is categorized as objective, and the reason is it gives you a percentage of people that say this, another percentage. It's telling you it's not universal, all right, but a majority will go for this. So many times it's said to be objective as well. So what's the nature of truth? Is it going to change with time or not? Then the other thing you want to find out is what kind of data do you need? Are you going to be needing qualitative and quantitative? You know, we already determined that the first time. So if I need qualitative data, it means it's either textual or what? Graphical. Those are the two major data that I'm looking at. Textual could be from documents, from your interview transcription. Then graphical, it could be from the pictures you take, from the observations and all. So if I'm doing qualitative, it basically goes that way. But if I'm doing quantitative, in fact, there's a lot of categorization. somebody is going to ask you, are you going to ask them point blank? Okay, another question we don't need to answer. How old are you? Have you ever tried to ask? Did they answer you? Yes. So what it means is, for age, if I try to use numerical, they will not answer me. But if I use categorical, they will actually answer me. Categorical is you have grouped them either on the ordinal scale. Ordinal scale is the strength of agreement. Nominal scale is it doesn't matter, male or female, landlord or tenants. It doesn't matter. Black or white. Yes, it doesn't matter. But what if I ask you, to what extent is this room lit? Somebody will say not at all. The other person will say to a higher extent. So that's ordinal. But what if I want to go the way of numerical? Then I could have discrete. What is discrete and what is continuous? So a few persons will actually call this interval and still leave this as continuous. Continuous number is anybody can pick. Okay, some people call this as scale variable. Scale means you give me exactly what your age is. How old are you? 2 years old. This one means how old are you? 1 to 10, 11 to 20, and above. So that's then what method of data collection are you using? Those methods actually differ. I've actually put it somewhere. For observation, for primary sources, you have observation, interview, questionnaire. Questionnaire goes only for positivism. That means it goes only for quantitative. But observation and interviews will go for qualitative. So let's go to the next one. So this is where I now talk about the quantitative designs and the qualitative designs. This is before this because I didn't label them subsequently. So let's go to the next slide. What is a survey? So a survey is that kind of research where the researcher, how do I want to put it now? Where the researcher gathers data using standardized documents. Do you understand? The person gathers data using standardized documents on already predetermined variables. It means I already know what I want to find out. And why do we call it standardized documents? It's the same document that I give the first person, that I give the second one, that I give the third one. So question 1 for one person is question 1 for whole. Question 2 for one person is question 2 for whole. The options I give to one person are the options everybody have. Do we understand? So we have that standardized document. You already have predetermined variables, but what you have is a narrow subject. Do I want to look at characteristics? Do I want to look at opinions? Do I want to look at preferences? It focuses on the facts. The variables you are investigating are known. Then your unit of data collection is also known. What is unit of data collection? If I'm working on architectural firms are my units of data collection. For MSc students who are possibly working on hospitals and you want to collect your data from the doctors very likely will be your unit of data collection. But what if what you are doing is you have categorized them by hospitals, right? Then one person is responding on behalf of the hospital and that person happens to be a doctor. What's your unit of data collection? The hospitals themselves. Do you understand? So it depends on how you have been able, and that's also the way you would analyze. You are not going to say doctors say, you are going to say hospitals said. So, and that's the way so you have a known unit of data collection. So basically there are two types. You have the longitudinal survey, then you have the cross-sectional survey. What we are used to most of the time is the cross-sectional survey. A cross-sectional survey is that survey where you collect data at a point in time. You would have read some works and they say this data was collected between January and March 2023. It's a cross-sectional survey. Forget about the number of months. But if data is collected repeatedly over a period of time, then it is called longitudinal study. If, for instance, I go to a particular location, I collect data this year, I keep it. Then I go to either to the same or another location, collect data next year, I keep it. Then I collect data another time, I keep it. That becomes longitudinal survey because data is being collected over time. That means repeatedly over time. So let's put it like that, repeatedly over time. But the way you now collect the data will now determine whether what you have is cohort, panel, or trend. I will just do a little rundown. If I'm doing a trend study, it's like what Coca-Cola or Nestle will do. For those of us who live in Lagos, sometimes they just knock on your door and give you a market survey, right? Who has done that before? Okay, how many people live in Lagos? Maybe they don't do it again. They just give you a market survey. It may be, I think I filled the one for Nestle before. I filled the one for Coca-Cola before. What are they trying to do? Find out whether things have changed over time. If they come this year, they may not come again in the next 4 years. So what they're doing is a trend study, and that's why you can go to Coca-Cola study and find out whether the consumption of their product has dropped or has increased over time, or whether people's perception of their products has dropped or has increased over time. So that's a trend study. A trend study would actually collect data from different populations, but on the same subject at different points in time. So this year I can go to Calabar. Next year I decide to go to Abuja. The year after, which state should I go to again? I'll go to Kano. No, it's not yet complete. The Yoruba state. I'll go to Oyo. So if I go to any of those, what I'm doing is a trend study. But if I want to do a panel study, I look at my 100 level students, and I pick 15 of them that I'm going to study until they finish. Just that 15. So in 100 level, I give them one questionnaire. They fill it for me. In 200 level, I give them exactly the same questionnaire. In 300 level, I give them exactly the same questionnaire. 400, I give them exactly the same questionnaire. I can match their response in 100 level to their response in 400 level and say the same person answered these questions. So what I'll be doing in that case is panel study, because I'm trying to find out whether those 15 students have changed in the course of their study. But I can also do a cohort study. I'm still going to use 100 level. If I want to find out social behaviors of, what do they call 100 level students? Freshers. Social behavior of freshers in Bells University. It's not architectural, Abi. No, don't let's do social behavior. Culture shock to architecture. I want to go to architecture. Culture shock, Abi. When we come into architecture, the first thing is this work is too much. I can still remember. So culture shock. If I want to study culture shock amongst 100 level architecture students, but I want to do a longitudinal study, what it means is my samples are going to vary. Why? All I'm going to be looking at will be 100 level. The only thing that will match them will be that they are in 100 level. But the set of people that are in 100 level this year are different from the set of people that will be in 100 level next year. Then that will be different from the set of people that will be in 100 level the other year. So those are the kinds of studies you want to carry out. Although what works for us most of the time is cross-sectional study. But by the time you graduate, you can go and do longitudinal. Then we have experimental study. I saw this somewhere. It's an experimental study that was carried out by somebody. So this time around, you are manipulating different variables, and as you manipulate them, you want to find out what are the effects. I think I've given an example of you trying to like check the lighting within a particular room. I've also given an example of the student that is working on daylighting, who will have to do some simulations. Why would he do the simulations? He's supposed to find out whether the lighting levels will change based on the window size he adopts, and that's why he has to do it when he finishes the design. He has done some bits of survey. But when he finishes the design, he takes it back to Revit, begins to change the size of the window, the positions of the window. For now, he has found out the different types of lighting in space, the different ways of lighting in space. So he's going to begin to work between those things and see which one works the most for the space he's designing. He is designing office complex, but he's saying he wants to limit the use of artificial lighting. So he's using light shelves. He said he wants to use light tubes. I said no problem. By the time you put it inside, we'll see which one is the most effective. So those are the things you'll be looking at. So you have a unit of observation, you are intervening. Like for these students now, the experiment will involve removing one window and putting another one. Revit is very good with that thing. And putting another one. You know, removing a part of the ceiling and putting a light tube. So doing all of that, what is he doing? He's carrying out a form of manipulation. Then he will be able to tell which one is the most effective. Then he measures the outcome. Then we have action research, which I said many times applies to practitioners. I go to a particular environment. If I want to find out the attitude of people in a particular area to a waste management site being located close to don't let's use waste management. What is more architectural that we can do? A casino. You know, most neighborhoods don't allow casinos. They have their reasons. But let's say I want to find out the attitude of people in Banana Islands to the location of a casino close to them. What do? I go as if I'm constructing. No, before that time, I go to that area, try to like study them, what is their perception of their environment and all the like. Then I beg somebody to give me a site. Then I put on it casino. Everybody that is passing believes casino is going to be built there. Then I go back there. What do? Find out from them what has now happened to that perception with the location of the casino close to them. So what am I going to do with that? It will help me find out whether they will positively receive it. And if they positively receive it, what do? I can ask my clients, go ahead and build. And that's why usually they say most of the time it applies to practitioners. So that's just a cycle for action research. Ethnography, I think this will mostly apply to persons who are on their PhDs. Ethnography, some people will call it participant observation. Some will say it's not all the time that it's participants. What is important is in ethnography, the researcher is trying to understand social interactions, is trying to understand behaviors and perceptions within communities, within particular groups. So if I put a group together and I want to find out how do they interact, how do they relate with one another, it means I have to observe them, right? That kind of observation, some persons say it can be direct or indirect, it can be participant or not participant, it can be overt or covert. I can be in this room and I'm observing what everybody is doing and nobody knows. What have I done? I've done covert observation. It's still ethnography. But if I come to you and say, today I'm going to be observing what you are doing in this classroom, everybody knows what I'm doing, right? I'm still observing you. Although some people will now decide they want to be gentle that day. So that is ethnography. So for persons who are working on their PhD, if for instance I want to find out the use of space in particular community, I think I've seen a research on the use of kitchen before. There's no way, okay, like the use of kitchen, I can look at it in two ways. I can look at it quantitatively, I can look at it qualitatively. If I want to look at it quantitatively, what am I going to do? I will give people who have kitchens questionnaire, right? Help me find out how do you use your kitchen. But I can do ethnography. I can go into a particular estate where their kitchens are exactly the same. I would have gotten information of maybe their community development application that will be coming into your kitchens at different times. Then what do I go to do? I go sit with them and see how they use the kitchen. Do we understand? So what am I doing? I'm carrying out ethnography. It will take time, but I'm carrying out that observation so that I can record their behaviors within the kitchen. For some of us, we can do anything in the kitchen. We eat in the kitchen, we brush in the kitchen. What else do we do in the kitchen? Some women feed their babies in the kitchen. Some remove their in fact, sitting room is worse. You know, sitting room is all purpose. Laundry. What do people do here? So that's why I said there's no particular right way of doing research. And if I carry out a study on use of kitchen and I decide to use ethnography, I can assure you I'll get richer results than the person doing survey. Why? There are a lot of things I'm not going to tell you. If you give me a questionnaire, I'll be like, by the time I tell you now that I sleep in the kitchen, you go and say something. So I'll just cancel it. So you want to document. The essence of ethnography is actually to document. You can't generalize. It's actually to just document. So if I want to do use of kitchen, use of particular spaces, I can do ethnography. Then if I want to study a particular culture, and I will still mention Benin because I think they have the richest culture that I know. I don't have another one. If you want to go to Benin and you want to find out about the way they use their communal suites, I think Benin people have a lot of communal suites. The way they use their communal suites, what do? I need to go and sit there. I may be there 3 months, 6 months. So I actually need to be sure I'm from that place. So that is what it is. And persons will say it's immersive because ethnography is never separate from the person carrying out the study. You're actually part of that study. You are part and parcel of that study. And what you're trying to do is experience it so that you can relate it. So that's why they call it ethnography. Historical research, I think historical research many times will depend on documented evidences. Documented evidences could be artifacts, they could be some things in archives. So if I want to do, if I want to work on the role of architects in the development of Nigeria, 1980 to 2020. You know I can do that. But I can decide to do it historically and my source of information will not be what? Some things that they have somewhere, newspaper reports, magazine reports, what else? What else will I be relying on? Then I want to look at the old buildings that were built within that time and see whether anything changed within that particular period. So if I'm doing that, I'm actually relying on documented evidences. Then I may also be looking at oral evidences. For that kind of research now, you may need to go and sit down with some of our veterans who know everything about architecture because they need to tell me about it. I'm actually waiting for a PhD student to study the practice or the development of architectural practice within a particular range of years. I know it's going to be a lot of work, but it will be worth it because somebody needs to document that. Then your samples cannot be representative. Case studies. This one applies mostly to both MSc and PhD students. If I say I'm studying a case, what am I doing? I pick something, then I look at it all round. So usually case studies are said to be holistic. Holistic because when I look at the tail of the elephant, I want to describe it, the length, the width, the color, the direction in which it swings. What else am I looking at? What else? Yes. What else does he use what does he use the tail for? So I want to look at it holistically. So now let's look at it in terms of buildings because that's what concerns us. if I want to carry out case studies of particular buildings, somebody says the architecture of Economical Center, Abuja, a case study. You know, I can do that case study. It will be enough for me. What and what am I going to be looking at? I'm supposed to be looking at it holistically, right? And that's why usually when we carry out case study, the first part of the case study gives us a brief description of the building. This building was designed by so and so person. It was built between this year and this year. What else? What comes before again? MSc students. The location of the building. Thank you. So you just want to first give me a general description before I now go to the next thing, design concepts. Usually I tell my students, there's no case study without the plans. You know, we do a lot of, what do we used to call it again? Bobo. You have done case study, but we can't see the plan. Then you are telling me the lighting is efficient. The staircases were wide enough. And I'm asking myself, where are the staircases? Because I couldn't see them. Not in plan, not even in pictures. So sometimes when you're carrying out case study, I said the first thing is a little description. The next thing is actually to talk about the style that whoever it was that adopted it used. Whether the style in terms of the concept, or does it fall to a particular era of design? Is it in a particular era of design? So if it's in a particular era of design, I'm still there. If it's in a particular era of design, what I'm reading is something else. If it's in a particular era of design, then what and what era did it belong to? What are the characteristics of that particular era of design? So when I'm also carrying out case studies, I want to look at the plans. And what are we looking at in the plans? I want to look at how they are linked. I've seen some very smart students who would help us color, like if I'm working on circulation now, I just help you color all the circulation in particular thing, because I want to trace it and I want to use it somewhere else. But apart from that, Google Earth has made a lot of things easy for us. Go to Google Earth, you will actually get the site plan of that place. So they don't need to take you around. It will give you the site plan of that place. Go to Google Earth, it will give you the buildings that surround that place. Just in case when you went there, you couldn't look around. It will give you the pictures of the buildings that surround that place. It will at least give you an idea of whether, in terms of zoning, that particular building was properly positioned. So after you've looked at that, you are supposed to look at the site plan and analyze it. What are we analyzing in the site plan? We've done a lot of things in architecture that we need to bring up. What is the maximum site coverage that it's supposed to have? What does this present one have? What parking requirements? What was the parking requirements? What has this one met up to it? In terms of landscape, does it even have landscape at all? We have a lot of buildings in Lagos that don't have landscape at all. Does it even have landscape at all? Then, who is familiar with the 5 points of architecture? Le Corbusier. It tells you that even if you have to use up the land, you must make up for it on the roof. That means your green must come to the roof. So that's sustainability on its own. So you also want to find out, have they been able to meet up with that with those requirements? So critique the site plan. Critique the construction technology. What kind of materials were used? Are they sustainable? Then what exactly is the structural form that was used? What's the structural form that would have been used in that? It's easy to know the structural form of any building. It's very easy to know. Then in terms of the requirements, have they been able to meet up with the requirements for that particular place. You know, you've read your Akidata, you've read some other data books that says, if I'm to design a stool, this and these are the things that I should have. Do I have those things? Or do they have those things? Because it will also help you in your design. In what ways have they arranged it? In fact, some persons will go as far as trying to do the flow charts within that space and find out, have they really worked on it well? It's like, I saw a design recently. We have a very large building. And to go to the toilet, you must pass through all the private areas as a visitor. So those are the things you want to begin to look at. Have they really met up? You want to check the flow chart. Does it work? In fact, somebody was telling me that in our office, to go to the toilet, they must pass through their boss's office. An architect designed that. I don't know. So the circulation you will critique, then the building services. The building services, what kind of services do they put in? In what ways? You know, when we're talking about building services, what do they include? The mechanical services first. The waste disposal, yes. Electrical. I think some people design high-rise and they forget to put the ducts. Eh? Yes. They even forget to even put a service room. Then when they now finish, what used to happen? Some people will go and look for a staircase somewhere to go and start putting those things under, and it shouldn't be. Where?
From the courtyard.
From the courtyard. They pass it through the courtyard. Afterthoughts. Then services. Then now I'm on to what is important for all MSc students. Don't run a critique without running the critique of your area of focus. If I'm doing lighting, when you worked on your literature for lighting, it tells you in terms of lighting, this and these are the provisions. Akidata will give you a bit. Those books that you read on lighting gave you another bit. Critique it in under those headings. Now, I talked about a student working on, okay, let me do biophilic. The person doing biophilic, give me one of the principles. Huh? Who is doing biophilic? One of the principles. Another one. Usually you're supposed to have a water body on site, right? So now let's look at it. I put water body. I must critique all those things, on all those case studies, based on whether they have water bodies. Yes, based on whether they have water bodies. And those that have water bodies, what was the size? What was the location? Because it will help you in your own design. Then if I go to lighting, the first thing they will talk about in daylighting is orientation. I think that's one of the principles, orientation. It means for every one of those case studies, one of my headings for critique must be orientation. It must be orientation. Then I must tell whether each of those case studies have been properly oriented. So what we're saying in essence is when you're carrying out a case study, we used to tell our students that advantages and disadvantages ended when you were in 200 level. Please leave it for 200 level students. Now that we have become seniors. At MSc level, please leave it as critique. But each of those critiques should be under particular headings. Under those headings, and those headings you carry them from one case study to the other. The same heading you use for one case study is the same heading you will use for the next one. So that at least you first address the architectural part. The first part we addressed was the architectural part, right? The general architectural part that applies to everybody. But your own add-on will be that area that you are focusing on. So that's what a case study should be. So usually case studies will involve small samples. They call it multiple method. Why do we call it multiple method? I can choose to do interviews, I can choose to do observation. If I like, I can even choose to do questionnaire. And that's why usually case study, although most times they are classified as qualitative, but they also use quantitative measures because you want to find out a few things. Some persons would say you should use questionnaires that are not structured, so that they are free to write down whatever it is that they need to write for you. You can't generalize results, and for every case study you need triangulation. Triangulation is confirming the results of one by using another. So if I okay, I think we were discussing something. Somebody says space provided adequate. Abi? Adequate. So the question is, the space is for how many people? He did not know. What is supposed to be the space per person? He did not know. So please, that's why our data books are there. I'm sure you've all done it, but what used to happen with MSc projects is you find out those things, you leave it in one chapter. Then when you start designing, you throw it away. So you will check what are the standards actually. Did they meet up this to standard? This particular space is supposed to be for 100. What's the space per person? What does it add up to if you find the area? Then what is the area of this particular place? So that's the way to look at it. Interpretation is also subjective, and that's it on case studies. So I think cruising home, we've defined what case study is, why you need research design, the factors that influence, steps that you can use in selecting. Then we ran through a few research methods that you can apply in architecture. And I would like to close with this. Then nothing has such power to broaden the mind as the ability to investigate systematically and truly all that comes under thy observation in life. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ma. For me, I've just learned a lot. I'm sure for master's students, aside from their research work, I want to believe they are getting another angle to how to carry out case studies. And I want to believe that it will show when next you come for your presentation. I want to see how you have improved, so not just on your research, but on how you have documented your case study via all the headings that she has just called out for us. I know some of us are doing well right now, but with the new perspective and angle to it, I'm sure you are already thinking that you still have a long way to go. Thank you very much, Ma. We are already blessed.